Hey everyone, it's Michael GoosebumpsFan. Today I want to talk about something that's like Goosebumps. I know a lot of you are getting tired of that, and I have to tell you honestly, I want to start off this video on a very different note. Like I said, we're running out of book hauls pretty much. There's nothing really to show you for book hauls. I didn't get anything in this week. But the big thing for me, I feel bad for not getting you a whole lot of content this November. That was actually something you wanted. I do have a lot of stuff I talked about this month, and I do have some stuff that I am planning on starting as of today, Goosebumps-wise. I plan on reading the 5th of the Tales to Give You Goosebumps books, mostly this weekend, but the biggest problem, I have to work Sunday, because everybody at work wanted Wednesday off for Thanksgiving. People wanted a 5-day weekend next weekend. So I'm working Sunday, and I'm really pissed off about it, frankly. But, this weekend I won't get a whole lot done, but I will try to read as much of the book as I can because I want to get out a book review for you guys. I realize that I haven't done really any Goosebumps book reviews for like 2 weeks now on the channel, and I felt kind of guilty about that, frankly. I've had a lot of trouble with reading here recently. Like, I went over to BitChute, and I did some videos on there for things that I've recently watched or things that I've recently read, like The Christmas Candle. I did some videos over there, some things I haven't read in like a year that I wanted to talk about, just because I'm trying to get a little bit of a content type of thing built up over there a little bit. It takes forever to end up on the search engine. I'm just now showing up on Google when you type in my Michael GoosebumpsFan BitChute account. Took a couple of days to even show up on that, but now that's happening. And this whole COPPA crisis just has me in a really oddly depressed funk, frankly. It's almost like anything I do is almost pointless now. You know, I'm kind of scared of the whole COPPA thing, frankly, because I don't want the channel to die. I want to grow this channel and be able to talk to so many people about so many things. Now, one thing that was encouraging, I've seen 2 channels that I love to death, well, really 3 that I love to death that have actually spoken up and started talking about this. Number 1 was PewDiePie. Finally started talking about this topic and how scary all this stuff is. Geeks and Gamers finally started talking about it. Finally, you think they would have been one of the first ones to jump on this, especially since the Quartering jumped on it a while back, but now they have. The Quartering's another one, so really there's 4 I have. But this morning I also saw that MatPat from Game Theorists is finally talking about this with the FTC stuff. And we're not all just being called conspiracy theorists now. These bigger YouTubers, now that they're concerned for their own channels because they realize they'll be affected by all this stuff too, now we actually have something happening here. People are starting to panic. People are starting to go to the FTC's website and call them out on this. Hopefully we get some traction, and then I can realize that we have some safety here at some point. You know, if anything is rebutted or taken away. But in the meantime, I am terrified of what's going to happen with YouTube. I'm terrified with what's going to happen to the entire internet, for that matter. But I have to be frank with you, that's one of the biggest reasons you haven't seen a whole lot of Goosebumps content this week. You've seen more BitChute stuff, but not really even Goosebumps-focused stuff over there. Not that the goal over there is to do what I do here, but just the fact that I'm petrified about what's going to happen, frankly. I really don't want to deal with it. I don't. So, kind of been in a funk the last week or so, and I gotta admit, it's really taken a toll on me and my motivation to work on this channel, because I'm kind of like, you know, what do I do with December, aside from just doing what I planned about, reading some of the Christmas Goosebumps books and doing videos on that? What's the point if it's going to get deleted and taken down? If I'm going to get fined for it, I'm going to have to delete everything anyway. So, been a little hesitant about all that. So let's all stay in prayer. Hopefully God will handle this and knock the FTC on their ass, you know. But anyway, so let's go into talking about what this video is about. I've been in such a funk. I read the horrible K.R. Alexander, The Fear Zone book, and ranted about that in a video. It deserved it. It was awful. But there's another YouTuber here on YouTube, not that K.R. Alexander was, but there's another YouTuber here on YouTube that was inspired by Goosebumps to write his own kind of short story collection. His name is Cameron Chaney. You can watch his videos here on YouTube. Like I said, just type in Cameron Chaney, you'll find his stuff. He wrote a book called Autumncrow. And I love this cover, I love that title, it's so Halloween-like. And I know we're past Halloween, it's November now, we're almost in Thanksgiving and next week. And I just wanted to read this. I don't know what it was that was so appealing about it, I just wanted to read it. And I've been in such a bad mood, and I feel bad because in one instance I think I kind of took it out on the book a little bit. Not that I threw the book or beat it up or anything. This is a good book. I actually really liked it. I had never watched Cameron Chaney. Somebody else had recommended in the comment sections that I should check him out, that I should check out this book. And I'm thankful they did. There was some really good stuff in here for the most part. And I'll kind of get into some of the stories as the video goes along, but I kind of just wanted to talk a little bit more about, certain aspects of this. He was inspired by Goosebumps. There's very much a very connective tissue amongst all the stories. Most of the stories are focused on this town called Autumncrow that has all these weird things happening in it all the time. If you think about movies like Tales of Halloween, which I did a review for during October, if you think of something like that that's like an anthology film, that's kind of what this comes across like to me. It's like everything is tied together, but it all focuses mainly around experiences in this town called Autumncrow. And at first I was kind of like, that first story in here, I'm going to look up the title. The first story in here, Follow Me In, is awful, frankly. I hate to be that guy. I hate to be that guy. I was on a really pissed off note when I started reading it. That's a very short story. It's like 5 pages long. I started reading it, and I immediately hated it, and I didn't pick up the rest of the book for like another day, right? That's what's taken me so long to read this 150-page book. That first story, Follow Me In, is so rough and so nonsensical about some either guy or woman, I'm assuming it's a man, chasing after his wife that died. I'm not entirely sure, but it's like, it's real weird. It's trying its hardest to be poetic, and I didn't like it at all. But, if you can get through that story or just skip it altogether, the next story really made up for it. The next story was called Pumpkin Light. And I really liked this one. I thought it was really cool. Basically, there's a woman who may or may not be some kind of witch, essentially. She meets a young girl. And this woman is trying to bring her husband back to life as like a scarecrow, right? And it's really cool. And it's kind of creepy, and the ending is just one of those weird things, like Donnie Darko, where it just ends on this weird, bitter note that you don't know how to feel. You're just a little put off by what's happening, or what's happened in general. And it's kind of interesting, honestly. I was really, really impressed with that finale. Really good story. Definitely gave me more hope for the rest of the book, about the rest of the book possibly being good. Which, by the way, before I forget, this book is very much filled with a lot of adult things. Not like sex scenes or anything like that, but there's a lot of language in here. Again, my channel is GoosebumpsFan. It's Goosebumps focused. R.L. Stine's old books. The biggest thing with this is that the channel, I try to be kind of in the middle. I know I talked about Tales of Halloween, and I talked about Stephen King's It, the book. And I try to warn people when it's more adult content at times. I would argue that this is more for teens/adults, not really like a Goosebumps audience, like younger middle grade, lower middle grade class. I would say that those folks are not going to be as impressed or interested in this as an adult would be. I think adults would love this book for the most part. But anyway, the third story in here is really, really good. It's called Burnt Brownies. Basically, there's a brother and sister. The sister is kind of neglectful to her younger brother. It's Halloween night, which pretty much all these stories take place on Halloween. Not all of them, but most of them I would say do. As far as I know. As far as from what I remember off the top of my head after reading this for like a whole week. Because I struggled trying to get through it because I was just in such a pissy mood over this COPPA situation. I didn't even feel like it was worth reading it. As mean as that sounds, it wasn't about Cameron Chaney. It was about me just not wanting to read, basically. Just wanted to make videos, did it on BitChute and stuff, like I said. Burnt Brownies is really cool. Basically, there's supposed to be a house party that the older sister is handling. She doesn't want to take her younger brother out to trick-or-treat. Her mom leaves them home alone that night. And the younger brother used to have a really tight bond with the sister. And for some reason just doesn't anymore. Ever since she got into high school and turned like 16 and stuff, she almost acts like she hates his guts. And he doesn't like that. He also happens to see this man that haunts their house. He's a burnt man. He has like flesh hanging off and everything else around his face and all that. Kind of creepy, kind of gross, because he'll sit down and like there'll be like a grease spot left on like a couch or something where he sat down. It's pretty sick, frankly. And it's a really good story. It actually made me even more excited to read more of the book and see what we were going to get from Cameron Chaney. The weirdest thing with this book, now it probably isn't done like this, but the book to me felt like as you read, the book got better and the writing style got better. It almost felt like Follow Me In was the first story he had ever written, and then the rest were just improving upon what he had done before. I was very impressed. I was very, very impressed with most of this book. I thought it was very, very interesting. I think this is Cameron Chaney's first book. I believe. I'm not sure if it's self-published or not. It says on the back that it's published by Library Macabre, but I think I read somewhere that was Cameron Chaney's publishing. Like, he had made that. I don't know if it's true or not. I could be wrong about that. But if this is a self-published book, this is incredibly well done, and there's very few typos at all in the entire book, which shocks me, because that's never the case. Even with my own books, that was never the case with those being self-published. But Burnt Brownies was really cool as a story. This idea of this boy seeing this dead, burnt man, that was pretty creepy at times, frankly. The finale was pretty good, too. A little predictable, but good. Now, the next story in here, Frost, I was hoping for a lot better. It was decent. It was good, for the most part. Very predictable. Very predictable. I guarantee if you're a big, like, horror fan like myself, you knew what the ending of this story was going to be when you got to a certain point in the story. You knew. You just, it was too much like other things we've seen before. And maybe Cameron Chaney didn't know that. I'm not going to blame him for that because, you know, it's not his fault. But it was very predictable, in my opinion. Basically, this guy is supposed to be driving, and he just leaves his house and family because his dad is mean to him. His mom kind of doesn't defend him and stuff. She wouldn't be surprised if he left anyway. So he just basically takes off and leaves entirely from his house. I think he's like 16 or something. And he drives his car into a town called Autumncrow. And he starts off kind of weirded out by how weird this place is. And then he keeps driving, and then he sees the same sign that he had just passed. And then at one point he encounters a man who wakes him up in the middle of the night, knocking on the frost of his windshield and stuff on his car. It's kind of creepy. And then we all knew where that was going. You know, we all knew where that was going. Predictable, like I said, but not bad. It can be predictable and not be bad with movies and books and everything. I think this is a great example of that, frankly. I think the next story, though, or no, not the next story. Well, the next story was good, too, but the story after the next story was the one that made up everything for me. The next story was called Saving Face. Basically, there's like a homeless man. He's wandering around outside, and he basically gets stuck in the woods, and he's told that he actually starts, like, getting torn apart, basically, like his face and everything starts coming off. And he's told that he has to trick somebody else to coming out into the woods to be trapped, too, in place of him, to be able to escape from this place. And frankly, it was kind of eerie. He happens to see, like, a man and his son that were playing, like, baseball or whatever over on the street. And the dad's being really mean, or the stepdad, or whatever this guy is being very mean to his son. And our main character, the homeless man, just does not like this at all. And it's very interesting, in my opinion. I actually really like that story a lot. Kind of very Stephen King-like. You know, I feel like Stephen King would have written that story, and it's very, very odd how Cameron Chaney mimicked that kind of writing style. Not entirely so, but enough to make me invoke this feeling of Stephen King. The next story, though, I'm going to tell you, this next story messed with me really bad the other night. I'm going to tell you straight out. Scariest story in the book. Scariest story in the book. The title is like a reference to a creepypasta thing, as far as I know. It's called I Have No Mouth and I Must Feed. Of course, there's a story from the creepypasta community called I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. I thought at first maybe Cameron Chaney had written that story, and then I realized there was a different word at the end of each of those titles. But this story, right, I'm terrified of animatronics. I'm terrified of animatronics. So you can imagine on YouTube when the very famous, very infamous video called I Feel Fantastic showed up with the animatronic that sings that absolutely terrifying song. There's a whole urban legend based around I Feel Fantastic. Never in my life did I think that I'd be reading a book and I Feel Fantastic either be referenced or actually have the mannequin from that in the story. This story is that case. I thought this was a genius idea. Absolutely genius. And the execution of it was even better. Of course, this is close to Halloween. You have a group of friends, mainly our main character, who is a girl, who, the main character at least, is terrified of that doll, Tara, which is the mannequin thing from that video called I Feel Fantastic. And they discuss the urban legends surrounding this. They describe all kinds of stuff talking about this topic. The guy who runs this kind of haunt, you know, where people dress up in the costumes, they jump out at you and stuff around Halloween time and all that, in the buildings that you go through. Basically, he built like a mimic version of Tara, the robot from that creepy video. Now mind you, like I said, I'm terrified of animatronics, and I work second shift, so when I come home at night, I'm up by myself till like 5 o'clock. It's pitch black outside and everything, so I get scared very easily when stuff like that gets to me. I cannot watch things like I Feel Fantastic because of how bad they scare me. And that story, I'm not joking about this. I'm very much a chicken. This story, this whole book did not really scare me until that story. And that story very well could be one of the creepiest stories I've ever read in my life, frankly. I know not everybody's going to love it, because of certain aspects to it I don't want to spoil for you. But to me, that story scared the crap out of me. I mean, it genuinely scared me so bad that I slept with the lights on that night. That does not happen very often with me, right? I'm 25. That doesn't happen very often with me. When I see something like that, or I read something like that, it takes a lot to get me in that mode. It's a very primal fear for me. I'm scared of robots and stuff. I don't like animatronics, I don't like any of that stuff. I'm the guy who will not go near the giant Santa Clauses at CVS, right? Because I'm terrified of those things. I hate them. I physically despise those things. They terrified me when I was a kid. So did the Chuck E. Cheese animatronics. I don't like them. I don't want to be around them. I don't like them. I don't like seeing them. You know, if Chuck E. Cheese would ever become like Five Nights at Freddy's and have animatronics walking around on the floor, I'd never go. I'd never go back. Even if I had kids, I wouldn't go back. Not that I go now, but if I was a child or anything, I wouldn't go. If I had kids, I wouldn't go either, because of how scary that is. I don't like that stuff. I don't know what it is. It's always gotten to me. One of the worst encounters I've ever had was when I was a kid. My mom took me to like a Walgreens or something, and they had those screaming, talking Christmas trees. The little tiny ones, right? And you didn't think it did it. You didn't think it did anything. It wasn't the cute one that had the little cute face on it. No, this one was the one that's like hidden, that when you set off the sensor, it like opens its whole head. You know, it scared me to death when I was a kid. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go look that up. It traumatized me as a kid. I think that's part of the whole fear of animatronics and stuff for me. And Halloween decorations too. I'm also scared of a lot of that stuff. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. This story mostly focuses on that Terra doll thing being at this haunt attraction for Halloween time. And our main character's terrified of it too, so I can immediately relate to that. It's almost like Cameron Chaney's terrified of it too, like the video and animatronics and stuff, because it felt like it was the kind of fear that I would have written about that, like the kind of things I would have pointed out about animatronic and the terror of that. It felt like that's what he was doing, like he had an actual legitimate fear of this stuff too. So I'm curious if Cameron Chaney does. I'd love to hear in the comment section if he does, if you happen to be watching this for whatever reason. This story is the best in the whole book, in my opinion. It's the scariest in the book, hands down, but the best probably so, in my opinion. But like I said, there's certain aspects, kind of like a supernatural aspect too, that I don't think most people are going to like. I just don't, especially if they don't have a fear like of animatronics and evil and stuff like that. But that story, I wanted to let it know, I wanted to let everybody know on record that that story kept me up all night. Pretty much. I slept with the lights on as a grown man, 25 years old. I don't know why, but that story got to me tremendously. Anyway, I finished the book last night. The next to last story is called Crypt TV. And I really love this story a lot too. This is a really, really, really big highlight in my opinion. Crypt TV essentially is about a young man who his parents made him move to a new town outside of Autumncrow because Autumncrow has become a very dangerous place to live. And he meets a bunch of boys. He's not allowed to go back to Autumncrow to trick-or-treat or anything with his friends. And this fellow ends up getting dared to go into a crypt, right? In a cemetery in that new town. And he does, and he eventually finds his way into a tunnel and finds something very creepy at the bottom of this tunnel. And it's not really, I would say the story itself is more humorous and feels so much like a Goosebumps story. So much like a Goosebumps story. And I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought the supporting cast, well mainly the supporting character in this story, outside of the main character, I thought was genius. I thought it was fantastic. I really liked that character a lot. Like I said, the story in particular has like a lot of like a comedy feel to it sometimes. But it really works. It really showed Cameron Chaney's talent and his range as a writer. Going from that terrible, or terrifying, I have no mouth and I must feed, to this very silly, very kind of dark tone by the end of the story kind of story. that really got to me, and I really enjoyed it a lot. Of course, the title is very weird for this. You probably already know what it is. Crip TV. I thought the incorporation of that into the story reminded me a lot of One Day at Horrorland from Goosebumps. So there are some aspects of this book that I really like that I feel like were greatly inspired by Goosebumps. So it kind of like Cameron Chaney really pulled through on that, in my opinion. The last story in the book is called There Are Monsters Here. I was not super crazy about that story. I think it's a little bit weak to end the story, to end the whole book on. Basically, there's a family of people who have monsters that follow them all the time. So, for example, the younger sister in the story might be watching TV or something, and you can't see other family members' monsters. You can only see your monster. And at one point, she happens to be like watching TV or something. She happens to see, like, you know, the thing might be peeking around the corner looking at her and then jerk away really quick. There's things like that that I thought were going to be pulled through a whole lot more, and they weren't. That is what it is. You can't make every story a winner. It's not going to be the case, whether it be my book or his book or anybody's book. Stephen King is worse. Stephen King would have done a whole lot worse with this story. But overall, this book was good. It had some really good things in it. Again, a couple of missteps, in my opinion, a couple of very predictable things, but I'm telling you, pick up the book alone for I Have No Mouth and I Must Feed. Or Crip TV, for that matter, because both of those stories I thought were great. Absolutely fantastic, like professional stories, like really good horror classics. But I'll never get over the traumatization of I Have No Mouth and I Must Feed, and I will keep this book just because of that story. It will stay on my bookshelf because of that story. I will read that story when I genuinely want a really good scare. But like I said, stayed up all night long with the lights on because of that story. Man, I'm sorry it took me so long to do this review, and I'm sorry it took me so long to get around to reviewing this book in general. It's just, this week has been a mess with the COPPA thing and with my work situation. Work has been really crappy here lately. I don't want to get into that, but it has been. But this book, man, it's really good. I don't want anybody to think that the reason it took me so long to read this is because it's bad. That's not the case. It was very, very, very well done, very competent either. If you were worried about a self-published type of book and worried to see what an author's first book might be, if this is his first book, I don't know if it is, but I think it is. This was really good for a first book, in my opinion. I thought it was very cool, and again, this cover, man, I hope and pray that I can get a cover artist, or an artist in general for my particular horror stories I'm writing. At some point, God willing, I want an artist like that that can draw something like that. I mean, that is just an incredible cover, in my opinion. Very cartoony, but very spooky, you know? When it comes to Autumncrow by Cameron Chaney, if I had to rate this book on a 5-star basis, and that's mostly an enjoyability scale, I'd probably give it like a high 3 out of 5. It's really good. Really good, in my opinion. I definitely recommend it a lot. Again, pick up the book just for that one story. You know, I mean, you won't regret it. But anyway, what are your thoughts on this book? Did you read it? Did you love it? What do you think about Cameron Chaney as a YouTuber? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. Put your thoughts and comments down below. Again, Cameron Chaney, if you happen to be watching this video for whatever reason, really good job, man. Really, really impressed with this book. If you release something else, I'll totally buy it, frankly. Anyway, what are your thoughts, guys? Put them down below. Thank you for watching. May the Lord Jesus Christ bless you guys today. And again, I'm sorry it's taken me so long for trying to get some content together for you guys and neglecting you over Goosebumps needs for books and stuff. But it's been crazy this month, honestly. Anyway, thank you guys. God bless you. Goodbye.